What's going on? My name is Psyche and welcome to Dead Cells 2.4. This is now officially named the What's the Damage update. And today I wanted to give you guys a run through of the update, of the new features, what I think of it. So without further ado, let's get started. Now, although there were no new weapons or mutations, a bunch of buffs and nerfs came to existing items. I've always been a fan of reworking the items that already exist in the game instead of just adding new ones. I think reworking an unused item is basically as good as introducing a brand new one instead. Now, there were a lot of changes, namely in the forms of buffs and nerfs, so I'll only list the ones that I think will be the most impactful. First and foremost, there were new room layouts in Distillery, Fractured Shrines, and Undying Shores. I've seen some of these myself, and I definitely think they shake up the game. Makes these biomes feel more fresh again, so if you're in the mood, definitely go through them to check it out. So before I go any further, I know I need to address the elephant in the room, and that is the removal of dual binding. So this just in, it has been confirmed by the devs that dual binding will not be removed for now, so you can still dual bind in 2.4. Mainly because they couldn't figure out how to program it to be in custom mode only. I ultimately don't disagree with the idea of removing it, as it's perceived by many as a cheaty strategy of sorts. However, I do think that the core problem with dual binding was with ice shards. The problem with ice shards is that it made a lot of survival builds too one-dimensional. It just outranked running a shield, which is a huge identity of survival. Now that being said, a lot of the shields were buffed. And I know that Punishment and the Thunder Shield were the only two that were nerfed because they were just vastly superior, which makes sense. This change definitely makes shields more viable, and I would think twice before picking up Ice Shards. Not to mention, Ice Shards received a further nerf on top of not being able to dual bind it. I definitely think Ice Shards is no longer an S tier item, but from what I've seen, it's definitely still not unusable. If you find the place for it, it still serves a purpose. Even though the devs are removing dual bind, if you really wanted to do it, I'm sure you can still find a way to do it with a third-party program. After the nerfs and buffs of many items, you can see how, if I visualize the changes according to my 2.1 tier list, you can see how a lot of the items are more orientated towards the middle of the list. Many D and C tier items were improved, and many S tier items were nerfed. Now, you have to understand that Dead Cells ultimately needs to have a difficulty threshold in order for the player to break through and beat the game. If some builds just made the game significantly easier, then it's no longer really Dead Cells if you think about it. This is a game that's known for being very difficult, and for a very good reason. This update almost makes me think of Binding of Isaac Repentance, how the devs also nerfed a bunch of really powerful items, such as the Brimstone, to make them a lot less usable, but they also buffed a lot of weaker items. So every single run that you do will definitely have some kind of challenge, so it's no longer about finding the perfect build and try to break the game. And on top of that, this also adds more variety to the build, because if every single build is viable now, then you will find yourself experimenting with more items that you've never used before, which I am definitely a fan of. Now, there were obviously some builds that were just vastly superior than others, such as Barb Tips, which just straight up breaks the game. I think making the game equally challenging regardless of the items you choose is a very good choice by design. The bottom line is, since now a lot of the items have been changed, definitely go out and try to use items you've never really tried out before, because by chance, you might find it to be really good now. Now, something that I kind of didn't like about the update is that I would have preferred more reworks instead of just changes in numbers. I've seen a lot of interesting suggestions, especially on the Dead Cells Discord server, and I would have liked some of them to be implemented instead. This update almost feels like a band-aid solution for something a lot bigger to come. But at the end of the day, these changes accomplish what the devs wanted, and that is to make a lot of the items more balanced. Now that the meta is in a much healthier state, there will most likely be bigger updates from now on. Now, you might not think that some of these buffs or nerfs are significant, but some of them actually are. For example, Sonic Carbine and Boomerang DPS almost got doubled in version 2.3 versus the alpha patch. I mean, just look at this footage with magic missiles. It's definitely something to be reckoned with. And I think Boomerang might just be the next meta breaker. It might just be the weapon to replace dual binding in tactics. You can throw it further and it takes damage a lot faster now. But I'll get to experimenting to let you guys know what I think. So that's everything. Now, it seems like it's a bit shorter than you might expect, but honestly, everything has been covered. I'm gonna be busy experimenting with some new builds and have them out for you guys in the near future. So stay tuned for that, and thanks for watching.